progress. Okay, recording in progress. Yes. Okay. So, yeah, we'll be looking at Shanti Deva first, who's a very, very great, compassionate person, it is said, wise and compassionate, who wrote, or at least spoke a text in the 8th century, which has become a mainstay of Mahayana Buddhism, the Buddhism practiced in many of the northern countries, especially Nepal, Tibet, Japan, Korea, Mongolia, parts of the former USSR, and so forth, but now widely spread in the West. Yeah, and again in India, thank goodness, since it's part of our original Indian tradition, the Nalanda tradition, as His Holiness the Dalai Lama reminds us again and again. Okay, so we will quote from Shanti Deva after the motivation and quiet period that we're going to have first. And then I'm also going to quote from a very popular, wonderful text called The 37 Practices of the Bodhisattvas, just a few verses, just to again give context. This was written by Tome Zangpo, a very great being of the late 13th and 14th century. So that will put it in the Buddhist context. And then we will look at some modern sources. Modern meaning starting in the mid-19th century, or one of them maybe even earlier. But anyway, 19th century and then moving on to 20th century. And hopefully that will bring the subject alive for us, 21st century inhabiting people. And then we can discuss. And in between, we'll also be reflecting, obviously. This is not a lecture, okay? It's an investigation. We're investigating together. I'm not any kind of scholarly or expert on this topic. So it's something we're investigating, okay? That has to be understood. And I trust it might be interesting and useful for some of us. And as I said, if it becomes boring, then those of you online simply have to make your rectangle disappear. And people here at Tushita, of course, you can also have a cup of tea, go to sleep, or look at the books in the library. I won't be offended. Okay. We'll start with what we call the motivation and some quiet periods. So with the motivation, it's like where we're headed, the direction we go in depends on intention, what we've decided very often beforehand. Although, of course, one can discuss that as well. But in general, it's said that if we can generate a very powerful sort of intention, one way or another, that is what is going to guide us. And that's where we are more likely to end up. So for example, I'm in Delhi right now. If I buy a ticket to Dharamsala, the intention to go to Dharamsala, then I will probably go there. I won't be going south. Whereas if I buy a ticket to Bodh Gaya, where the Buddha was enlightened, then I will go east from here. I will not go north or south. I'll go in that direction. And if I'm whatever, take enough risks or I'm bold enough, then I'd buy a ticket to say London or New York, and then I'd go in another direction, most likely. So what is our intention to be? Are we here just out of curiosity, which is also okay. There's nothing wrong with curiosity, really, although it killed the cat, as we say in English. Curiosity killed the cat, but maybe that was excessive curiosity. Here, we are gathered together because maybe we want to go deeper into those all-embracing questions which we keep on asking or which are there always in the background, right? So why am I here? What am I doing? What is this life? What is the purpose of life? Is there such a thing as lasting happiness? what is the nature of the spiritual path? Am I on that path? How can I tell if I am or not? All of these things may be, in our mind somewhere. Or how can I be happier in my relationships with other people? Since that is a predominant theme of life, our connections with other people. So how can I be more intelligent and happy in those situations? And what is the connection of all of that with our theme today, which is solitude, stroke loneliness? What's the connection? So there's that interest in that topic. We want to get to the bottom of that. So why we want to do that, there could be a kind of overarching intention that is, okay, I want to benefit. I want to be happy in this life. And some of us who may have already some inclination or feeling for this, or through our study, we develop some inclination that there could be, continuity of consciousness after this body dies. Then we begin to wonder, well, what's going to happen after I die? And might it be good to see if there's a way I can create causes for happiness even beyond death, which is what, so many Buddhists are saying, and not just Buddhists, people from other religions as well. Of course, my problem, and maybe many of us, is that we cannot see these past lives or future lives. So we're a little bit dubious about that, skeptical, which is okay. However, through study and practice and listening to many great teachers, we may develop some sense that, it's very likely, it's very logical even, possibly that there are future states, future continuum of this consciousness, which we call the mind. And so therefore I need to prepare for that too, just as we would prepare for tomorrow or day after, not just today. Of course, this can also be discussed, present moment awareness versus, future planning, etc., etc. All of that comes up, doesn't it? Anyway, so we can do that. We can have an intention to create the causes for future happiness. And the teachings say that to do that, we need to have a proper, what should we say, conduct in this life. We need to watch very carefully how we behave with our body, with our speech, and also mentally. We need to be very careful that we don't create causes for unhappiness through unwholesome action. However, and I'm going through this a little bit fast, I'm sorry about that, but you can, hopefully some of you study more and read authentic literature and it will become clearer. Another level of motivation would be, look, okay, happiness in this life and future lives is very good. But according to Lord Buddha, it's simply like having better and better accommodation in what is, after all, a jail. So it's nice to have good accommodation, but if you're in a jail, at some point you do want to get out of that jail. Most people, unless they, give up or are treated so well in the jail and never have any problems with the guards or the food or other inmates, then they may feel, oh, jail is okay. But most people in jail might want to be outside jail, Of course, there may be people in jail who are afraid of the people outside jail, that they might kill them if they get out. But maybe for most, it's not like that. So if we're in jail, we want to get out of jail, however comfortable it is. So that's another level of motivation, to develop the causes for what we call liberation, or in Buddhist terminology, nirvana, which comes through practicing, again, moral conduct, developing a focused, attentive mind, and using that mind to investigate reality, wisdom, how we exist, who am I, how do things exist, all of that. So if we do that very, very well, Lord Buddha said we could attain freedom from this rather miserable, revolving circle of death and rebirth going on and on and on, fueled by ignorance, attachment, anger, all sorts of disturbing emotions. So we could be free of that forever, forever. Now that's a very enticing, a very, very powerful sort of incentive, isn't it? To be totally free from that kind of revolving circle of despair and dissatisfaction. So that's another level of motivation. You could say, well, I'm here at Tushita today in order to investigate and to listen. And long term, I'm hoping that this kind of activity can help me plant seeds to be able to practice the conduct, the concentration, and the wisdom that will help me get out of the jail forever. We might think that's it. What could be higher than that? Well, what's higher than that is if we begin to think about the jail is not just a jail for me, it's a jail for everybody. Everyone in the jail wants to get out, wants happiness, wants freedom, even if right now they don't know what those words really mean. Again, Buddhism states we all have what we might call Buddha nature, or a level of awareness, a pure level of awareness, which is in a sense, and I'm just using language, which is very deceptive, in a sense that is yearning to be discovered, liberated from all of the garbage which has been piled up on top of that. Garbage in the sense are disturbing thoughts, habitual patterns of behavior, all the nonsense we go through in our life, that is obscuring our deeper purity, right? So a third level of motivation is I'm going to completely discover my Buddha nature, because that's not only the way to fulfill my own highest purpose, but it's also, and this is actually the prime reason, it's also the way to benefit others in the best way. Right now, I do want to help others, very clear. All of us want to help somebody. Even a serial killer. Somebody's in the bathroom. Okay, good. I hope you had a good turnout. Even a serial killer probably loves someone or something, even if it's a flower or a dog or a pet, budriga or something. Everybody loves something, cares for something. Of course, some may not, but we all have the potential to, if not now, in the future. So therefore, we cannot write off anybody. We all have this wish for uncovering our deeper nature, which is openness and love and spaciousness, you see, and wisdom, and so forth. So therefore, our highest level of motivation would be, look, although it's kind of fake right now, it's not the real thing yet, but maybe I'll investigate this intention of uncovering my true nature, my Buddha nature. And in that way, I'll be really somebody capable of offering myself to other people, help them in all sorts of ways, which I can't do now because I'm limited by my prejudices, fear, hope, expectation, all of that stuff. I think we're all familiar with these states of mind: anxiety, depression, laziness, sheer inertia, thinking, oh, well, I can't do anything. What can I do? Just one person. So with this kind of motivation, we're trying to cut through all that. We're seeing that is just a temporary excuse, that our deepest nature is something extraordinary. We'd really almost have a heart attack if we were to see what is our deepest potential. It is so extraordinary, it is said. It is totally beyond capacity to put it into words. It is so amazing. So I've given you rather too much already. Just think about your motivation. Why are you here? 25 people online and 7, 8 people here at Tushita. Why are we here? And don't feel upset that you don't have the highest level of motivation yet. We have to be kind to ourselves in the beginning. That's very important. So, what's our intention? And we could begin to also work with this with another question. How far do we think taking care of myself alone and being worried about my own situation, my own happiness, how far has that actually brought me any lasting satisfaction? And is it possible that sometimes when just being there for other people in some way has brought a satisfaction and happiness which has not even been sought, it hasn't been even looked for, but it is just there when we are there for other people, not just me and my problems all the time. Okay. One could spend a long, long time with motivation, but you're getting, I hope, a little idea. And this can all be, of course, explored more. And there's plenty of material of this on this in the Buddhist teachings, in the texts as well as the commentaries, and the authentic literature, of which there is quite a lot. Authentic meaning by people either very realized teachers or at least very, very sincere and scholarly and well-intentioned students who have written on these topics. I mean, we can't all be realized masters, but there are some very, very, very good books by scholars and practitioners who have obviously done a lot of hard work internally. Yeah, so that kind of literature one should study, and one will get, a deeper understanding of all of this. Yeah. So I'll start partly out of respect for these great teachers of the past, because it's easy sometimes, I find, to forget them. I at least get so sometimes caught up with a lot of modern literature, poetry, which is very valid in its own way, but then sometimes one loses touch with the original wonderful material by very authentic practitioners. And here, by authentic practitioners, I mean people who have really transformed their minds, who are really in their lives, they, I believe, cared for others more than for themselves, which is not to say they neglected or hated themselves, not saying that at all, but their lives were devoted to others, simply to benefit others. That was their life purpose. And they had the tremendous skill to be able to do so in many ways. So that's why, one should again and again go back to the original literature. So I'm going to quote Shantideva and then the 37 practices, and then also a short something on from Shanti Deva, from Milarepa, the great yogi. Yeah, okay. And I hope I don't get lost because I have a lot of books here and a lot of sources. Okay. So what we'll do is, since we haven't had our quiet period yet, I will read from the Shantideva, and then we'll have 6-7 minutes silence, okay? You can ponder that, and if you still have some more reflection you want to do on the motivation, then you can do that, okay? So let's do it that way. Yeah. So this is from the 8th chapter of Shantideva's great work, The Way of the Bodhisattva, or Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life, as another translation has it. So this is the meditation chapter, where there's a tremendous amount of material on how to reflect, okay? So I'm quoting all the verses from verse 18 to 39. So much can be said about them, but right now I just want to read them because just reading them also you'll get some idea. There's not a lot of technical language here. Okay, here Shantideva is exhorting us in this chapter basically to let go of the disturbing emotions, the klesha in Sanskrit, the delusions sometimes we say, although don't get confused with the other modern psychological way of using that term. Here we just mean disturbing emotions, afflictions of mind, which cause the mind to be rough, confused, and further and further away from reality. Okay, so verse 18 onwards. So, you thoroughly confused mind, by the piling up of whatever objects you are attached to, misery 1,000-fold will ensue, come about. Hence, wise people should not be attached, because fear is born from attachment. With a firm mind, understand well that it is the nature of these things to be discarded. Although I may have much material wealth, be famous and well spoken of, whatever fame and renown I have amassed, gathered, has no power to accompany me after death. If there is someone who despises me, then what pleasure can I have in being praised? And if there is another who praises me, what displeasure can I have in being despised? If even the Buddha was unable to please the various inclinations of different beings, then what need to mention a malicious person such as me? Therefore, I should give up the intention to associate with worldly people. Then he talks about worldly people. They scorn those who have no material gain. Yeah, I think we see that a lot. We even talk differently in India to people we know aren't as well off as us or are working for us. They scorn those who have no material gain and say bad things about those who do. How can they, who are by nature so hard to get along with, ever derive any pleasure from me? It has been said by the Buddhas that one should not befriend the childish, because unless they get their own way, these children are never happy. Now, when shall I come to dwell in forests, amongst the deer, the birds, and the trees that say nothing unpleasant and are delightful to associate with? When dwelling in caves, in empty shrines, and at the feet of trees, never look back. Cultivate detachment. When shall I come to dwell in places that I don't cling to as mine, which are by nature wide and open, and where I may behave as I wish without attachment? When shall I come to live without fear, having just a begging bowl and a few odd things, wearing clothes not wanted by anyone, and not even having to hide this body? Having departed to the cemeteries, when shall I come to understand that this body of mine and the skeletons of others are equal in being subject to decay? Then, because of its smell, not even the foxes will come close to this body of mine. But this is what will become of it. Although this body arose as one thing, the bones and flesh with which it was created will break up and separate. How much more so will friends and others? At birth, I was born alone. And at death too, I shall die alone. As this pain cannot be shared by others, what use are obstacle-making friends? In the same way as travelers on a highway leave one place and reach another, likewise, those traveling on the path of conditioned existence, samsara, we could say, leave one birth and reach another. And until the time comes for this body to be supported by 4 pallbearers, palki wale, while the worldly stand around stricken with grief, until then, I shall retire to the forest, befriending no one, begrudging no one. My body will dwell alone in solitude. If I'm already counted as a dead person, when I die, there will be no mourners. Marte samay hi hi nahi hoga. And as there will be no one around to disturb me with their mourning, thus there will be no one to distract me from my recollection of the Buddha. Therefore, I shall dwell alone, happy and contented with few difficulties, in very joyful and beautiful forests, pacifying all distractions. Having given up all other intentions, being motivated by only one thought, I shall strive to settle my mind in equipoise by means of calm abiding, shamatha practice, and to subdue it with vipassana, superior insight. Both in this world and the next, desires give rise to great misfortune. In this life, killing, bondage, slaying, and in the next, the existence of the hells. So that's from Shantideva, juxtaposing the beauties and the benefits of being in the forest with being simply caught up in all of our worldly distractions, desires, the 8 worldly feelings, pleasure and pain, gain and loss, and so forth. Let's stop before we go on, because there's quite a lot you might want to just reflect on, or just be quiet and be aware of your breath. Whatever you would like to do for the next 6-7 minutes, please do that, okay? Staying mindful, not allowing the mind to just rush off into total distraction, recollecting what we're doing, bringing the mind back with stillness, relaxation, attentiveness. Those 3 qualities are useful. And remembering that we can let go and relax, dissolve with the out-breath, and not get uptight. Okay. Don't worry if the mind keeps on getting distracted, gently bring it back to the breath, that sense of letting go with the out breath. You have many thoughts coming, you can just label them, just say thinking, thinking, and then come back to the breath. Don't get completely carried away. Okay, thank you. I hope that gave you just a little time to reflect on some of what we've already covered, which is a lot actually, just to look at the 3 levels of motivation, or 4 if you include just the intention to be happy now or in this life, then there are 4 levels of motivation. So that and the extract from Shanti Deva, that is enough food for thought for possibly a lifetime. But anyway, we'll carry on now. So I'll now read from the 37 practices of the Bodhisattvas by someone called Thome Zangpo, who lived from 1295 to 1369 in Tibet. He was, by all accounts, a very special person who from a very young age wanted to practice generosity. One famous story regarding him is that his monk's robe became infested with lice. And these lice were, of course, biting him and drinking his blood. And his students told him that he should, kill them because they are going to make him sick, But he refused. He said that, it was important to feed these hungry lice. So he didn't get rid of them. In the end, they died of their own accord, having had, I guess, whatever, their fill. But he was that sort of person. He was not overmuch concerned about himself. He was concerned, as any great being, more for others welfare, whether they are lice or people. Anyway, he wrote this out of homage to compassion and to the Buddha of compassion, Avalokiteshvara. And it's a wonderful guide to all of the practices of the Bodhisattvas, those beings who are on the path to full enlightenment, Buddhahood. And it's a text which is taught regularly by many great lamas, including His Holiness the Dalai Lama and others. I'm just going to read 2 or 3 verses which are connected with our topic today of solitude and aloneness. So having spoken in his first verse about how important it is to study, listen, and reflect and meditate on the basis of this very, very precious human life that we have, he then goes on to say this. And this is a poetic version. It's not a version many of us may have come across. It's a poetic version of the 37 practices, which is rather nice. It was put together many years ago at the Library of Tibetan Works and Archives. It was translation from 1975, which is quite early days in a way. Okay, remaining too long in one place, our attraction to loved ones upsets us. We're tossed in its wake. The flames of our anger towards those who annoy us consume what good merit we've gained in the past. The darkness of close-minded thought dims our outlook. We lose vivid sight of what's right and what's wrong. We must give up our home and set forth from our country. The children of the Buddhas all practice this way. Withdrawing completely from things that excite us, our mental disturbances slowly decline. And ridding our mind of directionless wandering, attention on virtue will surely increase. As wisdom shines clearer, the world comes in focus. Our confidence grows in the dharma we've learned. Live all alone, far away, in seclusion. Children of the Buddhas all practice this way. Regardless of how long spent living together, good friends and relations must someday depart. Our wealth and possessions collected with effort are left far behind at the end of our lives. Our mind, but a guest in our body's great guest house, must vacate one day and travel beyond. Cast away thoughts that concern only this lifetime. The children of the Buddhas all practice this way. Yeah. Powerful. Powerful stuff. But I wouldn't advise anyone who's a father or mother to, run away from their young children like the Buddha did from his one son. I think he knew exactly what he was doing, and the Buddha's son was well taken care of, it seems, and later became a monk and highly realized. So we can't all do what the Buddha did, but I think the message is very clear. And probably, everyone in this room, except perhaps myself, are quite a long way from home. Most people here at least 5-10 kilometers from home. My home is quite close by, but all of you and those of you, well, I guess a lot of you online are sitting at home, but that's okay. The point is we'll see what the point is a bit later, perhaps, in our discussion as well. So anyway, it's very clear what these verses are saying, to give up our homeland, because if we stay too long in our homeland or our home, we get very attached to loved ones, and then we have disputes with, neighbors and in-laws and, whoever. We get upset, and then that becomes a problem. That disturbs our mind, and then we cannot develop calm abiding, this calm state of mind, which is then able to penetrate reality, which is what we need to do, and let alone develop compassion and so forth. We can't do that, can we? Our mind is disturbed by all of these conflicting emotions, quite apart from all the mundane duties of life, which we have to engage in if we stay at home. Anyway, there'll be more discussion later on this, because many will rightly say, how can you give up your responsibilities at home? You can't just, who's going to take out the garbage? Who's going to, cook the food? Who's going to pay the property tax? All of this. We have property tax in India. I'm sure you have it in Turkey and everywhere else, one way or another. There are 3 Turkish people here, I think, online, 3 or 4. So it's a kind of a Turkish day today. Welcome, all of you. I'm very happy to, because in the news, you only hear very biased news about Turkey and all of that nonsense about, geopolitical relations. So that's, one's had enough of that. So wonderful to have friends from Turkey here. So I want to read a bit from a commentary on Milarepa. Milarepa was, by all accounts, one of Tibet's greatest and most famous and beloved yogis, practitioners. A yogi is someone who connects with reality. That's the meaning of yoga, union, connection with reality. That's the true meaning of yoga. So he was a great yogi who had, you could say, connected with reality through his meditations and so forth. His life story is very colorful and famous, and you must read it if you're interested. Anyway, this is a commentary on Milarepa by one of the great 20th century masters of Tibetan Buddhism, whom I tend to quote a lot, Chögyam Trungpa, Rinpoche. And here he is putting a lot of emphasis, as the authentic teachers do, on how the spiritual path is something that we should be very careful if we're engaging with it just to feel comfortable and looked after by somebody, Mata pita to nahi hai ya guzar gaye, and then we want some big mother father figure or something, someone to look after us, what he calls a babysitter. So let's see what he has to say. And then we'll have a short break, because we'll have been going for an hour, just 2-minute break, because I've been drinking coffee, and you also can all have a break. And then we'll continue. So he's talking about the practice of exertion, or, what keeps you going in the practice? What gives you energy? What gives you perseverance? Say you're on a spiritual path. Exertion comes when we realize our loneliness, when we begin not to deceive ourselves that we have company, that we have babysitters. Exertion comes when we realize that whether or not we have babysitters, we still are alone. We might have our television, magazines, newspapers, crossword puzzles, but still we are alone. We are always alone. That realization of aloneness or loneliness is a very powerful experience. Even if we are twins, we still are individually born, and we definitely die individually. You experience your own cup of tea individually. If you're thirsty, someone cannot drink a cup of tea for you. You have to do it for yourself. Everything is your own project, your own work. The meaning of this is that we are all very alone, very lonely. We experience alone, we die alone, and we are born alone individually. We are individuals, so we are lonely people. Everyone is. We join clubs, WhatsApp groups, have nice chats with people, have fun with people, get married, have children, take all kinds of measures to be accompanied by somebody else. But at the same time, we do all this individually. If we get married, then I get married and you get married individually. We might sleep in the same bed or share the same kitchen, but we are doing our individual things nevertheless. So we cannot really have complete company. We can't be completely dissolved, one person into another. It's impossible. Therefore, we're alone, absolutely alone. So no matter, we cannot really fully express our experiences or the depths of our emotions entirely and fully to somebody else. It's never been done in the past, it will never be done in the future. No matter how much technology might develop in the world of electronics and so forth, no matter how many dictionaries, somehow it's still an individual experience. This was spoken in the 80s or 70s. We ourselves alone, definitely alone. We are ourselves alone, definitely alone, all the time. It's a very lonely world from that point of view. Each one of you, myself included, is doing our own individual journey. The loneliness and individuality you experience, the pain, pleasure, disappointment, all the rest of it is your own individual experience. Nothing can help that. There's not anything else except what is known as practice. Practice is the only way. Practice of what? Practice of the path. Practice of meditation, and so forth. He puts it another way in another of his books, a very extraordinary book, actually. You know, sometimes you find books which are small and light, and you can carry them anywhere because they're small. This one doesn't quite fit in a pocket, but of course, some people have Kindle and all the rest of that. But if you like books, then thin, slim books are quite valuable to be able to carry around. And this one, The Path is the Goal, a basic handbook of Buddhist meditation by Chögyam Trungpa, is highly recommended. That's what I'm going to read from now, which is saying basically the same thing, but in slightly different language. Loneliness is one of the basic points. It means not having any security on this path of meditation. That's a dangerous statement, isn't it? That's a very scary statement, because we often look to religion, to meditation for support, for security, because we feel so insecure in this, you know, strange world. One can't even say that you get moral support. The only thing that's visible that apparently exists is the journey, the loneliness itself. That is a very important point for us to see and realize. On this path, we are not looking for the grace of God or any other kind of saving grace. I mean, don't forget, Buddhism also doesn't believe in a creator God. We believe there is a realm of gods, many gods, but not creator God. There's no sense that we are going to be saved that someone's going to keep an eye on us so that if we are just about to make a mistake, somebody will fish us out. If we had that sense, the journey would become very sloppy. Sloppy means, sorry, I don't know the Turkish for sloppy. Sloppy means kind of, what would you say sloppy in English? It would become vague and kind of not precise. It would be wishy-washy, you know, because we could afford to play around. We could think that in case we did the wrong thing, we could be fished out or saved by somebody. But that's not the case here. He even goes on as to say that in this path, the role of the teacher is to show you that the path is lonely. We would like a teacher to shine on the path and make the path so clear and to, you know, be our best friend and, you know, hold our hand and, you know, be like a very kind mommy daddy to us. And of course, sometimes teachers are like that. With certain students they know would otherwise fall apart completely. But at some point, the teacher has to show us that we're on our own and that we have to do the work alone. In order to hear the clear message from the teacher without any misunderstanding, you have to have a sense of commitment and openness towards the teacher, who in this case is known as a spiritual friend. Okay, we'll continue in 3 or 4 minutes, take a little break, all right? Stand up, there's tea and biscuits at the back, hot water, all right? People online, do your thing, you're in your own home, so you can do what you want, you know? Okay, just another minute, folks. You can bring your tea or biscuit to your seat if you want. Thank you everyone online for your patience. We'll have some discussion soon, but just a few more things I want to introduce. In fact, we'll probably need to carry on with this topic, connecting Shantideva with this topic and others from tomorrow as well. Tomorrow we'll have something, but since I'll be on the train, I can't do a Zoom session from the train. So we'll probably have somebody, Nivita probably will do something with you, whoever is there. And then on Tuesday, we can continue with this topic. We'll be online, I hope, from Bodh Gaya, Buddha's Enlightenment Place. And Nivita will start the sessions here in person at Tushita with some motivation and meditation practice. That's what we're planning. Okay, so let's continue. So we've looked at some of the more Buddhist background to this topic, and some of it will come more and more into focus and become more, I hope meaningful as we look at it from other perspectives as well. Just seeing if I missed anything important that I wanted to say from this. Okay, you can always come back to things that I've forgotten later. All right, so now I guess we'll just do this chronologically, really. So who comes first? First comes a gentleman whom I hope, if you don't know of him, more and more of you will, and read more of him. He was a very influential person who was inspired a great deal by the Bhagavad Gita and Indian mysticism. And this was Henry David Thoreau, who lived in Concord, Massachusetts, in the United States, and who experimented with living alone for some time in a small hut near Concord Lake or Concord Pond, the ponds there. And he wrote a classic about his experiences there called Walden, which is the German for woods. So Walden, or Life in the Woods, is the classic that he brought out. I'm sorry, I can't remember the year, but it's sometime in the late mid 19th century. Okay, so we're talking quite, for us modern people, a little while ago. And he devotes, obviously he was on his own, he devotes a whole chapter to solitude. And solitude, the topic of solitude comes up again and again in his work. He was a very interesting person. He wrote a book on civil disobedience. He said things, and he influenced Mahatma Gandhi in India, his works. He said things like, in an unjust society or under an unjust government, the place for all good people is in jail. You shouldn't be out of jail if you're a good, righteous, freedom-loving person under an unjust government. You should have been disobedient enough to be put in jail. Anyway, he was quite a character, and he spent some time in solitude. So I want to read a bit from the chapter on that in his book, Walden. Yeah. It's really something one has to read in toto. This is a 10-page chapter, The whole book is over 300 pages. If you have time, very well worth dipping into this. Some of the language is, it's not modern WhatsApp language, it's 19th century English. So it's a little different, but good for that. A good balance to a lot of the modern, what shall I say? I won't say anything. Okay. One could read, as I said, all of it. But this is, I wonder how many people, okay, how many people here at Tushita have spent time in solitude in a rural setting, not amongst buildings and concrete and so forth so much, but in a rural setting. How many of us here? Hands up. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 out of 8. That's pretty good. 5 out of 9. Okay, good. Yeah. And I hope some people online have also had this. But if you haven't had a chance, well, then you should read people like Shanti Deva and Thoreau and be inspired to do so. Right. He's saying, he's saying a lot. Where should I start? I've never felt lonesome, he said, or in the least oppressed by a sense of solitude, but once. And that was a few weeks after I came to the woods, when just for 1 hour, I doubted if the near neighborhood of people was not essential to a serene and healthy life. So just for 1 hour, he had a doubt whether he was doing the right thing by being alone, you know. Because otherwise we feel we need neighbors, we need, you know, we need everyone. But it didn't last more than an hour. And that was just the early part of his time. In the midst of a gentle rain, while these thoughts prevailed, I was suddenly sensible of such sweet and beneficent society in nature, in the very pattering of the drops of the rain, and in every sound and sight around my house, an infinite and unaccountable friendliness all at once, like an atmosphere sustaining me, as made the fancied advantages of human neighborhood insignificant. Every little pine needle expanded and swelled with sympathy and befriended me. So this, he's a kind of a, we would label him a nature mystic also. A lot of modern cynical people would laugh at this. Even my English teacher at school in England, I remember being very annoyed with him when we were studying William Wordsworth, yeah, the English poet, who pages and pages of nature poetry, you could say, of his love of nature and so forth. And this teacher we had called him Wordy Mouth, called Wordsworth Wordy Mouth. Matlab zyada bolte the. I got very upset. I thought our English teacher should show more respect to one of England's greatest poets. But obviously, the modern cynicism was there even in the 60s in England. So what to do, you know, if people think like that, what can one say? But it's unfortunately something more and more prevalent. We're so used to living bounded by cement and tarmac, and a few, of course, trees placed here and there for whatever, but that we have lost our connection with water and wind, soil, trees, in a, you know, in a very, what should I say, sensate way. We think about these things, but we don't have any kind of real connection with them, many of us. Anyway, Thoreau found unaccountable friendliness amongst all of this. Why should I feel lonely? Is not our planet in the Milky Way? What sort of space is that which separates a man from his fellows and makes him solitary? He asks. I have found that no exertion of the legs can bring two minds much nearer to one another. What do we want most to dwell near to? Not to many men, surely, the depot, post office, bar room, meeting house, schoolhouse, grocery. We don't want to, he's saying, congregate in those places where most men congregate, but to the perennial source of our life, which is to nature, water, soil, etc. This is written in the 19th century, so he's not going to say person for man. I'm sorry if the language offends anyone, but I'm reading what's written here and not what's necessarily politically correct. I felt it wholesome, he says, to be alone the greater part of the time. To be in company, even with the best, is soon wearisome and dissipating. Matlab, energy gets expended too much if one is with other people, is what he's saying. I love to be alone. I never found a companion that was so companionable as solitude. We are, for the most part, more lonely when we go abroad among men than when we stay in our chambers. Solitude is not measured by the miles of space that intervene between a man and his fellows. Later, he says, society is commonly too cheap. We meet at very short intervals, not having had time to acquire any new value for each other. What an interesting statement. It would be hard to make that statement nowadays. Harder. Only people who've maybe grown up in quieter, more rural places might say things like this. We meet at very short intervals, not having had time to acquire any new value for each other. We meet at meals 3 times a day and give each other a new taste of that old musty cheese that we are. Anyway, then he speaks about the indescribable innocence and beneficence of nature, of sun and wind and rain, of summer and winter, such health, such cheer they afford forever. Yeah, very well worth reading. Thoreau, for many, many reasons. Wonderful chapter on where I lived and what I lived for example, which gives an idea of why was he engaging in this experiment of being alone for a year or so. Of course, some cynics say he wasn't very far away from home. Apparently, he was just a few kilometers or miles away from home. But Tika, so what? He was alone and he kept away from home and he did his own thing. He grew his own vegetables and had very little to do with anybody else except nature and wild animals. But of course, there will be cynics always who will question and so on and so forth. But we have to see how, in all of this, it's relevant for you and me. What relevance does it have to us and our life? That's what we have to look at. Okay, I'll just do one other main person, then we may quote some more things, but there is a very wonderful book written by, which I've quoted from before in some of these sessions, but for many of you it'll be new, I hope. Many of you may have heard of Charles Lindbergh, who was a great aviator, but few of us would have heard of his very extraordinary wife, Anne Morrow Lindbergh, who wrote a very extraordinary book in the middle of the 19th century, sorry, 20th century, 1955 she wrote it, called Gift from the Sea, Gift from the Sea. Has anybody here read it? Good, okay. Gift from the Sea. She wrote it mainly for women in the middle of the, as I say, 20th century. Because she was a thinking woman, a very deep woman, who had gone through a lot of suffering also in life. I'm sure being married to a great aviator like Charles Lindbergh was not easy. But in addition to that, one of their children was kidnapped and also murdered. So imagine that, having to go through that, having one of your children kidnapped and murdered. But she, went through all that. She went through also the suffering of retiring. Hopefully, she was hoping to have some quiet, retired life together with her husband. But as soon as they both, he retired or whatever, he died soon after. So she's somebody who had to, what shall I say? She was no stranger to loneliness and solitude and being alone. And she writes about it remarkably in this book and in the times that she spent on the East Coast of the United States, in the Long Island area, which is where she used to go regularly to just live by the beach and hang out and reflect and to write. And she's a very, very accomplished writer, very moving writer. So she says this, that there's many places I could start with in this book, this slim book. But she is remembering something that a friend told her. I remember with some shock a statement made by a friend of mine in France who had spent 3 years in a German prison camp. So obviously just after 1945, end of the Second World War. Of course, he said, qualifying his remark, they did not get enough to eat. They were sometimes atrociously treated, very badly treated. They had little physical freedom in the camp, right? And yet, prison life taught him how little one can get along with and what extraordinary spiritual freedom and peace such simplification can bring. Matlab, when you are reduced to the basics, how a human being is capable of living without, all of the things we usually need, we think we need to, to function. I remember again, ironically, she says, this is Morrow Lindbergh speaking. I remember again that today more of us in America than anywhere else in the world have the luxury of choice between simplicity and the complication of life. And for the most part, we who could choose simplicity, we choose complication. War, prison, survival periods enforce a form of simplicity on man. The monk and the nun choose it of their own free will. But if one accidentally finds it, as I have for a few days, one finds also the serenity that it brings. It's a difficult lesson to learn today, she says, and she's speaking 1955, remember? Hold on, I'll start before that. She speaks in a language that is very close to what we heard in the first part of this session. We are all in the last analysis alone. No man is an island, said the great English poet John Donne. I feel we are all islands in a common sea. That basic state of solitude isn't something that we have any choice about. It is, as the great German poet Rilke says, not something one can take or leave. We are solitary, and we may delude ourselves, act as though this were not so. That is all. How much better it is to realize that we are so. Naturally, how one hates to think of oneself as alone, how one avoids it. And it's not just talking about young people or middle-aged, I mean, everyone tries to avoid it, right? It seems to imply rejection or unpopularity. One will be left alone, one fears, sitting in a straight-backed chair, alone, while the popular girls are already chosen and spinning around the dance floor with their hot-palmed partners. We seem so frightened today of being alone that we never let it happen. Even if family, friends, and movies should fail, there's still the radio or television to fill up the void. Women who used to complain of loneliness need never be alone anymore. We can do our housework with soap opera heroes at our side. Even daydreaming was more creative than this. It demanded something of oneself and it fed the inner life. Now, instead of planting our solitude with our own dream blossoms, we choke the space with continuous music, chatter, and companionship to which we don't even listen. It's simply there to fill the vacuum. When the noise stops, there's no inner music to take its place. We must relearn to be alone. It's a difficult lesson to learn today, to leave one's friends and family and deliberately practice the art of solitude for an hour, or a day, or a week. For me, the break is the most painful, the most difficult. Parting is inevitably painful, even for a short time. It's like an amputation, I feel. A limb is being torn off, without which I shall be unable to function. And yet, once it is done, I find there is a quality to being alone that is incredibly precious. Life rushes back into the void, richer, more vivid, fuller than before. It's as if in parting one did actually lose an arm, and then like the starfish, one grows it anew. And then one is whole again, complete and round, more whole even than before, when the other people had pieces of one. Yet, I felt closer to my fellow men too, even in my solitude. For it is not physical solitude that actually separates one from other men, not physical isolation, but spiritual isolation. It's not the desert island or the stony wilderness that cuts you off from the people you love. It's the wilderness in the mind, the desert wastes in the heart, through which one wanders, lost and a stranger. When one is a stranger to oneself, then one is estranged from others too. If one is out of touch with oneself, one cannot touch others. How often in a large city, shaking hands with my friends, I felt the wilderness stretching between us. Both of us were wandering in arid wastes, having lost the springs that nourished us or having found them dry. Only when one is connected to one's own core is one connected to others, I'm beginning to discover. And for me, the core, the inner spring, can best be refound through solitude. Wow. For me, that's amazing. When I first found this book on a shelf in Kathmandu, started reading it, blown away. So you see, you don't have to be a card-carrying Buddhist to be intelligent and wise and to do the right thing. Often we have this arrogance when we discover Buddhism. Wow, I found Buddhism, meditation, it's so great. You know, this is the greatest, I'm the greatest. Not I'm the greatest, but Buddha's the greatest. And we become card-carrying Buddhists with our certificates. But this wisdom is everywhere. I'm not saying Lindbergh realized emptiness or anything like that, but look at the wisdom there. Look at the courage of this person after all that she went through. It's amazing. Anyway, so I only read a few paras from a wonderful book, which I'm sure is available online. Many editions since it first came out in 1955. She wrote an afterword to it in 1975, 20 years after its publication, saying how it was written originally for women, but so many men have written to me saying they enjoyed it and it's relevant for them as well. Obviously, because men aren't totally stupid, you know, they also respond to wisdom. So, you know, the book attracted men as well. And it's a classic. If you have time, again, you should read that. You should all take a sabbatical and read some of these books. Okay, let's have some discussion now. Been going on and on and on for an hour and a half. I'm really sorry. What to do? What to do? Too much material. I didn't have long to put it together. Plus, An hour or two actually is not much time. People who go for psychoanalysis, they have an hour each time with the therapist. I've never understood how that could be enough. So, and in fact, it's supposed to be just under an hour or something. Maybe it's different nowadays. Maybe that's why therapy takes so long. You only get 1 hour each time. I know people who've been undergoing therapy for decades. I don't know. It may have helped a bit. Okay, let's have some discussion. You can unmute yourselves, people. But let's start with people here, the people who've come all the way to Tushita. Nivita, yeah.
Where does Sangha fit into this?
Where does
Sangha fit into this, like, necessity?
Okay, good question. Where does Sangha fit into this? Sangha meaning the spiritual community, our spiritual friends. We have the Buddha, we have the Dharma, and we have the Sangha. We have the doctor, we have the medicine, and then all the helpful nurses and staff who help us take medicine and keep us company and encourage us and do hold our hands when help us walk when we can't even walk in the hospital. So what about them? Yeah. So what's your point? What about them?
Where does it fit in? Because solitude is also so important, but Sangha.
So we're talking about solitude. So where does the Sangha fit in? Well, there's all these people being alone with others, helping each other, obviously, but realizing that the other person cannot do the work for me. But of course, people help each other. That's the whole point, to help others. But how do we really help others? That's an interesting question. How do we really help others? I've seen enough of people's relationships and my own connection with certain people to see that sometimes it is so much dependency and controlling of the other person that that seems to be a big obstacle to really opening up and discovering who one really is. And it leads to a lot of resentment when in the name of whatever marriage, companionship, people are actually trying to make the other person dependent on them, or they are dependent on the other person doing what they're telling them to do. I've seen this at close quarters, and it's very painful. Seeing people in a so-called relationship, and this could also extend to Dhamma relationship, people who think they know better than you, telling you what to do, how you should practice, blah, 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 and so forth. So it's much better to see other people as, okay, they're there. Where I can help them, I will help them. Where they can help me, yeah, I'm going to take help, but not having any kind of ultimate resource in them, realizing that even the Buddha can't save us. The doctor doesn't save us. The nurses don't save us. Actually, even the medicine doesn't save us unless we take it, right? I'm very bad at buying medicine and keeping it on the shelf or in the fridge. And then after a while, expired, So what's the point, One bought it with great enthusiasm. Or the book that I was going to read and change everything, And then it's on the shelf and you even forgot it was there. And then, of course, you rationalize, I'll donate it to a Dharma center later, very virtuous. But, it's the medicine that we take according to the instructions, which maybe take years or lifetimes, and that's cures the disease that we're suffering from. But of course, on the way, of course, we need helpers. If you're sick, if you're too young, like if you're a baby, if you're sick, if you're too old, then especially at those times you need also physical help. But at other times one does need some support, some encouragement, of course. Of course. No one's saying that encouragement and the kindness of others is not incredibly important. But I think what the teachers here are trying to stress is that we would like to be babysitted. in some way. We would like sometimes someone else to do it for us or to make it easier for us, very easy for us. You know, Guruji, हमको बचाओ, हमको कोई मंत्र दीजिए ताकि जब के मैं फटाफट, ज्ञान प्राप्त हो जाएगा. Please Guruji, give me a mantra so that by reciting it, I'll quickly this, quickly that. That's being discouraged here. It makes us lazy, don't you think? So the point is well taken. We need spiritual friends, but yeah. Thank you, Ezra from Turkey. You have to go. Thank you very much. So like that. Does that make sense? Does something not feel right there? Do they coexist, Sangha and an individual?
And I think so. And I think just even in general, we can't be fully a part of the community or let that help us with benefit that we ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah. Because there are people, sometimes you feel as much as you help them, they're always wanting help. They're clingy. They're wanting help. So even the Sangha can't help such a person because they're just always clingy or always complaining, always pointing the blame somewhere else. If you go and live in a Dharma center, you'll often find people like that or oneself doing it sometimes, So how do you help such a person if they're not also helping themselves through doing the work, the inner work? But yeah, there are times when a good, kind, wise spiritual friend is so helpful. I've had moments like that when my spiritual friends have helped me a great deal. Sometimes with a wake-up call, sometimes just some encouragement or kindness, definitely. But in the end, when you wake up in the morning, it's oneself waking up, and having to do what one's doing. And if a sad thought or anxiety comes or a panic attack, no friend can just get rid of it. And if you take medicine, how long lasting can that be? So one always has to do the work oneself. But there is that quote from Buddha that the spiritual companionship is the whole of the Buddha, of the spiritual life, something like that. Someone is asked the Buddha, is it half of the spiritual life or something? And he says, no, it's the whole of it. But don't forget, Buddha said what he needed to say to people in certain contexts, what was most beneficial for the hearer to hear at that point, But that shouldn't be misconstrued to make us think that spiritual friendship is everything. It's not everything. It's very important, but it's not everything. How could it be? Don't we have to make friends with our own minds? Like the person who said, my mind is like a bad neighborhood. I don't like to go there alone. So that person has to come to terms with their mind. Right? They have to make friends with their neighborhood. The gardener has to deal with his own garden, get rid of the weeds or whatever he's going to do to make it a beautiful garden. Other gardeners are busy tending their own gardens. They don't have time. They can give advice, give occasional seeds maybe even, but this gardener has to do the work, make the soil ready and so forth, water it and so forth. So something like that. Anyone else?
Yeah, I would like to explain my situation.
Who's you?
Divya. My name is Divya. I'm in Bhopal located. And I've heard you in Nagpur when there was a occasion. I met you there.
Could I see your face, please? It might be nice to see the face of someone talking, so it's not just a rectangle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Very good, Divya ji. हाँ, बताइए.
I have a psychotic problem of schizophrenia, and I end up staying alone, and then I have the voices hearing. Now, my mind is already complicated. I take medicine, keeping the brain clear, because I hear voices.
You hear voices, yeah.
And voices are not from anybody. and then the mind becomes very chatty. The whole day the meetings goes on in mind, and I don't know, I'm talking to whom, lot of people. Now, if I don't take medicine, this doesn't get controlled. So when staying alone and then hearing voices and then taking medicine, I want something. And maybe if I'm hearing the voices, I may switch it off when I want, and it will switch on when it goes. So, is there some practice for this or something?
Well, first of all, Divyaji, I'm not qualified to answer this because I'm not a counselor or therapist, and I don't have experience of schizophrenia myself so much, or with other people. But do you have any Buddhist guides? I mean, are you a Buddhist? Do you call yourself a Buddhist? Do you practice?
I don't know. I'm a Buddhist or not, but I'm quite influenced by Buddhism. And I practice my Sahaj Foundation. Divya helps me a lot. Divya Gupta from Sahaj Foundation. I take regular chatting hours with her.
Okay.
So,
and that helps you.
That helps me a lot.
Yeah, I mean, it's obvious that in certain cases one has to continue with medication because otherwise it gets completely out of control, right? And it's just life becomes unlivable. So then the point is, could there be some other practices you do that help in addition to the medication? Well, there are so many practices in Buddhism, especially basic practices, which might help if you begin them gently and in a relaxed way and don't expect too much from them, because expectation can be quite a dangerous thing, right? We might think that this is going to help me a great deal, and maybe it will one day, but it often doesn't happen in a hurry. So if one approaches some of these practices in that way with an open mind, in a relaxed way, then they could help. The basic practice of watching the breath, have you ever tried that?
Karma binding, yeah.
You have tried that. Okay. Taught by whom? You had a teacher or you taught yourself?
No, Divya had a workshop in which she did this. So karma binding, a workshop she had done online. So I attended that.
Did that help you?
It did help for some time. Yeah, it did help.
Did you continue the practice? Did you continue or did you start and then stop?
I started, I did for about 2 months or something, and then I stopped, it became irregular. But when this chatting voice become uncontrollable, I do taking the concentration on the note.
Maybe it's good to continue if you can, a few minutes every day. Divya, what do you think?
Yeah, I should.
Some continuity. Do you have any faith in any religious figures, or in Buddha or Krishna, or something?
No, not I'm basically born bottom in Hindu system, but I don't want to stick to stuff.
Right. It's for some people, faith in a particular and devotion towards a particular saint or figure can be useful, very, very useful. I mean, it's emphasized a lot in Buddhism, for example. However much we talk about doing the work on our own, we still see the Buddha as an extraordinarily important teacher and figure and person to think about and recite praises to and to visualize in our meditation. It's not as though we pretend that we can do everything without these external supports. So sometimes these external supports of statue, painting, visualization, very important. Maybe some study might be able to help you. I'm not sure. If your mind is already very overactive, I don't know how much study might help, but sometimes if you study, about the Buddha and the Dharma and the Sangha, that can be very, very useful. Are you a Marathi speaker and a reader? Basically?
No, I know Marathi very little, but I'm not a Marathi.
Okay. Okay.
I reflect a lot, checking myself where I talk to her, and so we have become two minds together almost while I'm reflecting to her. When I reflect with her, and she explains me this is the way I should think and talk.
Yeah.
So That helps.
Is loneliness an issue for you in your life?
At the moment, it's a part of life. Yeah.
And you're able to work with that?
Yeah. My work is fine. I think schizophrenia sort of a disease have a very good option of understanding the mind through Buddhism. And that is why I entered Buddhism, to understand my mind and to help myself to work.
Okay.
It's a big help.
Good. Yeah.
And
So
because of the regular sessions with Divya, I'm able to work in my office. My relations also I discuss with her. And then, so we almost like a two minds. Together.
Okay. Good. Yeah. It might be helpful for you to join in with these sessions sometimes, see how you feel. And then there's morning, Monday to Friday, we have morning shamatha practice, calm abiding practice. That may be also very useful for you. 20 minutes or so in the mornings, 8:30 a.m. So you can join that. Okay, thanks, Divya. We'll need to just see if any other people have something. Thank you. I hope this helps. Anyone?
Kabir sir?
Ji, Chirag ji?
Yeah, may I ask something?
Please, show your face if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Just briefly even.
Yeah.
I know. Where are you?
So I'm here, right here.
Yeah, you're there. Oh, there you are. Okay.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
So just one question that, like, how do we balance this? On one side, we have this motivation to act out of compassion, to be among people, to help in whatever way you can through your own right behavior. And on one side, there is this, when you hear things like this, you get a strong sense of renunciation, to go into solitude, to maybe at least in that sense want to practice by yourself and really progress on the path, which seems, when you think from that, especially, I don't know about others, but if it's about me, then when you think about the strong exhortations to be in solitude and practice, then that part within that ones that feels compassionate and interactive, in that, that just subsides, and you really want to get away from that. And in that process, the kind of compassionate heart that you have seems to like go to the backseat. So how do you balance the both apparent extremes, may not be extremes, but at least apparent extremes?
Yeah, that's very good. That's the 64 crore question, isn't it? That's a big question. The balance between, did you hear it, everyone? The balance between compassion and working and helping others, and the need for solitude. And when you're in solitude, the compassion goes down because you are more concerned. Well, maybe you have to check it out, because people like this lady author I quoted said she felt closer to her fellow men when she was in solitude. So maybe she is a special person and she knew how to use solitude in a very good way. Maybe she was not doing calm abiding practice as such, so she wasn't so intensely focusing on her breath and doing Buddhist practices on the beach on the East Coast of the United States. But yeah, your question is a good one, but I don't think we need to make too much of a big deal between, I don't think it's right to call them extremes, because when one is properly in solitude, the point is we should be working on ourselves in a way that makes friends with ourselves, which understands our own mind and makes the bad neighborhood of our mind into a good neighborhood, friendly neighborhood, so that friendliness automatically is radiating from us, whether we're in solitude or elsewhere. What do you think? So then the work, of course, if you become addicted, like some people do, to mindfulness and watching the breath and the peace and the bliss that comes to some people when they do this, they get addicted to it. And the Buddhist teachings are full of warnings about this. Don't get addicted to the bliss, to the non-conceptuality, to these states of mind, because then you will get sidetracked. Then you will lose your connection with others. You won't feel motivated to be of any use for others. And you may even give up responsibilities that you should not be giving up yet, So yeah, one has to be careful of how we use our time in solitude. But as Lindbergh says, if solitude can help us connect with some authentic, what she called it, inner spring, inner core, inner core within ourselves, then that inner core, according to Buddhism, at least Mahayana Buddhism, it is comprised of a quality of openness, intelligence, and warmth. Warmth in the sense, loving kindness, compassion. So if we connect with that in solitude, there's no chance of us feeling separated or totally fed up with others, We'll feel the opposite. But yeah, sometimes we just get burnt out, don't we, through lack of skill, and we just get sick and tired of working 18 hours a day, like many people of many of the younger generation do now, working 18 hours a day and being told by their bosses that they should be working 18 hours a day. I was just reading about this today or yesterday. One CEO getting upset when some workers said that they felt 18 hours a day was too much. And he said, he was saying, are you joking? This is, we're not fooling around in this organization, kind of thing. You have to work 18 hours a day. So, that of course is you're gonna feel burnt out at some point and sick, and you may even, commit violence or just on oneself, working in that kind of atmosphere month after month. So there has to be a balance, obviously. If one is overworking and with people who are competitive and not very kind, then of course you're going to feel negative towards living beings and want to get away from them as far as possible. And then you discover Buddhism and some nice practice, which makes you feel calm and clear, and you find a nice place and you say, this is it, I'm not going back into the world, into that horrible world. So that might be an extreme. But as with everything, we have to balance, Like the Gita says, the Bhagavad Gita says, not too much of this, not too much of that. I can't remember which chapter, something I read years ago, which drew me to Hinduism and Buddhism in my teenage. I can't remember which chapter, but there's, and I was reading it in an English translation, but something about yoga is a harmony. Not eating too much, not eating too little, not sleeping too much or too little, all of that. So I think if one does it on the basis of authentic study, authentic literature, then and have a good teacher, then one cannot really go wrong. But one has to be careful, it is said, if you have an inclination to be able to meditate in the sense of concentrate and develop a sense of stillness, calm, non-thought, or even blissfulness, then one can get very attached to that, I'm sure, and feel, oh, this is it, I don't need to do anything else. Then that becomes a big hindrance, it is said, to later developing compassion, because you feel, I have what I need. Compassion seems like extra work. You see what I mean? One is just feeling so good. Why should one worry about anything else? That's why we motivate all the time in Mahayana Buddhism, before every session. We motivate to be useful and beneficial for others. Otherwise, we can forget other people and just work on me, and my peace, my happiness, my bliss. And that would be taking it too far. Mayank, did you have your hand up?
So may I just finish this with one?
Okay, yeah. Okay.
Quick one. So, like the other side of it being not a question, but just a thought that when you're engaging in wholesome actions and when you're living with a compassionate attitude, trying to help as much as you can, then that also may become a sort of a. It feels nice to always be of help to others. So then isn't that also a little risky because you're constantly engaged with the world, and it's also wholesome? That how do you, can there be any danger in this because you're always busy, always helping?
Yes, absolutely. One gets burnt out. At a certain point, we get sick and tired because people don't appreciate us or say thank you, or they take advantage of us, or they use us like a mat, you know. So that, of course, often happens. If we have low self-esteem in the first place, we feel we have to prove that we're good enough by helping others all the time. Too much, in fact. When actually it's not real help, it's just trying to overcompensate for not feeling good enough about ourselves, or you know, whatever. So that is not useful at all, and we get exhausted and upset. There's a term for it, compassion fatigue or whatever, and so that doesn't help. Absolutely, you're absolutely right. So Trungpa, in one of his books, says that we should consider ourselves like an island. Ferry boats are coming and going from the shore to the island, which makes the island more and more alone, feel more and more alone. But then we have this constant interaction with others. So he says life is like love affair and loneliness. Life is a combination of love affair and loneliness, which I rather liked. So if we can maintain that balance, then that might be a good thing. You understand?
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Very good question. Mayank, what are you up to?
Venerable
Show your
Namaste, actually, I
Show your
mistaken-
face. Even if you haven't shaved today, Mayank, show your face. He's an old student of Tushita. Haji,
I'm in a pretty bad shape, actually.
you're in a bad shape. I want to see your bad shape. That's an
Are you
order,
sure,
or I won't listen to your question. I want to see your bad shape. I'll be the
Okay,
judge of how bad you're looking great, man. You're looking so handsome and wow. Yeah,
I woke up right in time to attend this
woke
session.
up in time. Wonderful, wonderful. See what a good student you are. Where are you? Are you on holiday?
It's my big balcony. So I'm just sitting outside.
Where? Kota?
No, in Delhi, Vasant Kunj.
Vasant Kunj, wonderful place. Yeah. Haji, bolo.
No, I had a very small question, Kabirji. This Miss Lindbergh book, what is its name?
Which one? Lindbergh.
book.
Gift from the Sea. Gift from the Sea. बहुत बार बोल चुके हैं इसके बारे में. I've quoted it dozens of times in the last 3-4 years, but you never wake up in time yet. Gift from the Sea.
Sounds good. Thank you.
It's amazing. This is Gift from the Sea, you see. देख लिया ना?
Sure.
हाँ, photo ले लो.
No, I have memorized the name now. Thank you.
Haji, so that was your question?
Yes.
I can't remember your question actually. What was your
No,
question?
that was it. The name of the book.
Oh, just the name of the book. Nothing else.
Nothing else.
Are you going to read it or what?
I mean, I'll definitely buy it, and then let's see how it goes.
Don't be like me who buy books and then just look at them as part of my reference points to remind me of who I am or what I'm not.
No, you're right though. I should read also. Yes.
I'm always right. The teacher is always right. Okay, Mayank, thanks a lot. Yeah, nice to see you.
Thank you,
You're
Kabir.
looking great as usual. Don't worry. Yeah, bichara. Okay, anyone else? Abhishek ji, you're also looking great. Yeah. Anything? No? Yes, Merve from Turkey. Is that the right pronunciation? Merve?
Yes, Merve.
Merve. Okay.
I have a question about laziness. I have this feeling like I'm helping others, and I feel very happy when I do that. So, just taking apart from self-cherishing mind and feeling that this is true when you help others, that you feel the true happiness, the long-lasting happiness. But sometimes I feel like very lazy, like I have time, I can do more, but I don't, because the laziness and self-cherishing mind is so strong. And I feel guilty. And I find myself in the loop, like I can do more, but I don't, and I feel guilty. I can do more, but I don't, and I feel guilty. Yeah, that's my question, how to deal with this.
I think you know how to deal with it, actually. I think maybe sometimes we're a bit hard on ourselves. Even Bodhisattva trainees need to take rest. In the texts, it also mentions that we need to take rest. But of course, sometimes our laziness, there are three kinds of laziness they mention in the teachings, and I find this teaching very useful because I suffer from all three forms. The first is a procrastination, yeah? Leaving for tomorrow what you should do today or could do today, you just leave it. Or, you know, tomorrow. Then the second form is getting distracted by worldly activities. You know, spending your time rearranging the furniture or this or that, all kinds of activities, anything other than sitting down and meditating. We do all that. That's worldly activity, which is another form of laziness. So the third kind, which is probably the most destructive kind, possibly, is when you feel I'm not good enough. I can't do it. I can't do this practice. So this is too much for me, you know. So then one doesn't do it. One just stops practicing, or you know. So we have to be on our guard against this. But as you know, feeling guilty about something is not going to help at all. Regret is something else. Healthy regret, in Buddhism, we say is like the regret that people feel if they discover they have mistakenly taken poison. Then you don't feel guilty, but you feel regret. And then you quickly do something about it. Guilt is very, what do we say, disempowering would be a modern word for that. It makes us feel bad and useless, and you know, makes us feel worse than we already are. So I don't think guilt is that useful. That could be a little bit remnant of some certain kinds of religion or spiritual practice where we are supposed to feel guilty, actually. So that's not so useful. One should just feel some regret and see if one can follow the instructions given in the teachings on how to cope with those three kinds of laziness. One is to remember death again and again, right? Even though you may be a young person, to remember death, or you could get sick anytime, or you could have an accident and become disabled. So many things can happen. So it's good to not put off one's practice for too long, right? So death awareness is supposed to be one of the best. And then if one thinks long enough, probably, and deeply enough on how so many people are suffering incredibly right now, then one gets motivated, you know, to at least try and do something, not necessarily physically, but at least to mentally keep up with the practice, because because one realizes people need help, you know, and maybe one can do a little more. But I wouldn't feel guilty. That's an action of violence against yourself. Violence doesn't have to be, you know, out there in the open and physical. It's a kind of mental violence against yourself, don't you think? What do you think?
Yes, but when it is like a loop, you know, like, you know, it works, but again, you find it in this loop. You have time and energy, I have time and energy. But it always seemed to me that what I do is so little.
So why is that? Is it because of procrastination or your worldly activities, or because you have low self-esteem? Which of the kinds of laziness do you think you suffer from?
No, the first two, because
okay.
That's the first two.
That's just a bad habit, and I can relate with it. It's a bad habit. It's a habitual pattern from past lives. I'm sure it is with me because it's so powerful. I don't think I developed it as a kid, but it's very powerful to delay and do things last minute. The people I work with know about this. It can be, I've been really scolded for this online, for doing things last minute or not doing them at all. So it's painful. So one has to, sometimes the fear of the scolding makes me do it. You know, I don't want to be, you know, massacred online yet again by a fellow board member or something for delaying. So then I just do it. I don't feel guilty, but I just don't want to be shouted at again, kind of thing. So that's a good motivator. Fear. Fear is a good motivator sometimes. But yeah, just the more we practice, the more we try, then the stronger the energy becomes. Do you have a copy of Shantideva's Guide to the Bodhisattva Way of Life? Yeah, so you just read the chapter on energy, on enthusiastic perseverance. Yeah, what is it? Number 5, 6? Sorry, number 7, chapter 7. After the patience chapter is the chapter on energy, enthusiasm. And it's always useful to read a bit of Shantideva. Just, just to create the habit. Having patience, I should develop enthusiasm. Awakening will dwell only in those who exert themselves. Just as there is no movement without wind, so merit does not occur without enthusiasm. What is it? It is finding joy in what is wholesome. Opposing factors are explained as laziness, attraction to what is harmful, and despising oneself out of despondency. So we have to check. I mean, do you have what's mentioned in verse 3 of chapter 7? Attachment to the pleasurable taste of idleness, craving for sleep. So we check which one we have, Or having no disillusion with the misery of cyclic existence. Because of these, he says, laziness grows very strong. So for me, it's a combination of all three. Not enough, pleasurable taste of idleness, for sure. Craving for sleep, yes. And not enough disillusionment with cyclic existence. Yes, I can tick all three. Can you tick all three? Or just, if you can only tick 1 and 2, then you're very fortunate. I can tick all three of those. So then there's a lot of work to be done. What about you, Isar? Isar, how many do you tick?
Probably all three at different times, different situations. Like Mayank, I also joined the session late today.
Did you?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, you can always join the late club. Yeah. Right. Well, thanks for joining anyway. Perhaps your mother reminded you to join. Yeah, she was here earlier.
She did, yeah. So actually, we were both conflicted between the CKSL session and here, so we were going back and forth. I think we
very
started
kind of
with that.
What's CKSL doing today?
So Venerable Lesok had a talk. It was actually interesting. It was the other side of this. So it was basically dharma for couples, like for relationships. So that was yesterday evening and this morning. So it was.
I didn't know that was happening. He's a very good teacher. Very, very good. Chalo, good. All right. Anything else? Anyone here? Naveenji? Anything?
I'm joining Zoom from here, so I can see people as well.
Oh, you're on Zoom. That's nice. Naveen is on Zoom. Yeah, of course he is. He's there too. Yeah, good, good. Merve, did that begin to answer your question? Sorry,
Yes, because coming back to the teaching, going back.
There's no hard and fast formula.
Yes.
And in any case, the medicine has to be opened and taken. It's very clear what the medicine is. But it's hard to take because of habitual patterns. All the teachings mention this. Habitual patterns are so strong, some of them, so strong. It's the most dangerous part of karma, is the habitual pattern to engage in non-virtue. Because then, you see, life to life, it makes us just want to do the same thing again and again and again, you see, whether it's killing or stealing or idle gossip or, harsh words, again and again and again. Life after life, we keep on doing it because it's become such a habit. Even though in many ways we're such a, good person or whatever, there's this particular habit, you see, which goes on and on and on. So, yeah, we really have to try and short circuit some of these habitual patterns, which are so destructive. And sometimes we don't understand why they're so strong. And they're so strong because we've been doing it for many lifetimes, according to the teachings. And that's when it begins to make more sense, I think. It's not something in our genes or something we picked up as a kid, you know. Some of them are so strong. They must have come from somewhere else. That's the Buddhist understanding. Don't know. Are things like rebirth generally accepted in Turkey? What's the majority religion in Turkey? I'm very ignorant. Is it Christianity or Islam?
Islam, but I took refuge 3 years ago in Kopan.
Ah, wonderful.
I do my best to practice. A little bit lonely because we don't have any center here. But
Really?
yeah,
Oh.
connecting with Zoom and traveling helps.
We'll have to parachute some people down there. Yeah.
I have hope in the future, maybe.
Or else, yeah. I mean, you and people who like you have been to Kopan and all, you have to become the teachers there. Start a study center. If it's allowed, is it allowed to do that in your country?
Now the political situation is a little bit, it's Zainab smiling. But when we have safe stuff in political, I think so. Maybe in 5-10 years, or maybe elections are in June. So we have hope.
I think your prime minister is going to the Queen's funeral tomorrow. I'm not sure if it's your prime minister or someone else.
No, because he didn't want.
He didn't want to.
His security and everything.
Yeah. I guess he wouldn't. Yeah, lots of politics there too. Yeah. The Queen. I thought I should bring in the Queen since I'm half British. I have a sentimental attachment to at least the image of the Queen, and the marmalade of England, and by appointment and so forth. Yeah, one is quite attached to some of these things. Anyway, what else?
So may I ask one more question, if time permits?
Who are you?
Sir,
Chirag. Bolo.
it's a small one. It's like you mentioned among the 3 kinds of laziness. I'm not sure if I picked correctly. One of it was anything that probably interferes with you having to sit and meditate. So any worldly activity.
Yeah, distracting worldly activities.
Right. So
Deva calls them unwholesome activities. Yeah.
So I mean, I generally find myself in situations where I probably use wholesome activities as an excuse to not sit and meditate. So it's like if I have to help someone or maybe do something better for the house or friends or family, and these things are never ending. And on one side I have to sit, and somehow I convince
Yeah, I can understand that one. Yeah.
So I convince myself that.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, now I need to do that, and everything's wholesome. It feels good. There's no harm in that. It's dharma related, or
exactly.
And one part of me says, okay, all of this is distraction, because ultimately you have to sit and meditate. And sometimes I'm able to let go of all of that and sit, and sometimes I get over involved, which also feels good, and there's no harm in it. So
this is a small question. This is a huge question. It's not a small question. I think, there's no special advice except to follow what the teachings are saying and practice them. Because, I mean, if I just look at the house I'm living in, I could spend my whole life just dealing with all the things that come up in the house, domestic things. So what's the point of that? What a waste of a life, I'd rather burn the house down, than spend all the time making sure it's okay. You know what I mean? Of course, I take my books out first, then I'd burn it. But, it's like, it's never ending. So we have to decide, is it true what the teachings say that we have to meditate? And if we don't do that on the basis of study and reflection, then we are going to have a very hard time when we die and after we die. Are we taking this seriously or not? If we're not taking it seriously, then it doesn't matter. Do what you want with your life, So we have to make a choice. But by just spending all our time on mundane things, that's not going to help us long term. It's not going to give us the power of mind that we're going to need at the time of death to ensure a good death and a good rebirth. Of course, if you think there's only one life, then it doesn't matter very much, really. Just do what you can. But if one has a sense there really are future lives, then the death of this life is the gateway to future lives. And how's that going to be? So then one begins to worry. But maybe you're not worrying so much because you're not yet a senior citizen. But I'm worrying a bit more now, finally. So
just sorry to interrupt, but even the mundane things are actually driven out of compassion. They help others. It's not like the typical
that's an
mundane
excuse.
things.
Sometimes it's an excuse.
Yes.
That's because we don't understand the benefits of meditation. Why don't we? Because we've never done it enough to find what the real benefits are. The yogis know what the benefits of meditation are. That's why they keep on telling us to do it. But we think, theek hai, it makes you a little peaceful, blah, blah, blah. We don't know the incredible benefits of meditation, that it's the only way, on the basis of other practice, the only way to go deeper, 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 and to achieve Buddhahood. There's no way yet discovered outside of meditation. And we're not at that stage yet where we can be so-called meditating in our daily life activities. No way. Even great yogis have to go and spend time in solitude to attain the spiritual power to attain Buddhahood. So what to mention us? So as Trungpa Rinpoche says, there's no alternative but to sit, by which he means sit and meditate. We may pretend all sorts of other things, but it doesn't work. So we have to sit and meditate based on proper study and reflection, not just, sit and meditate on, and then we don't know what we're doing. So yeah, that's one answer to your small question. And I'm sure we could talk more about it, but I think you're getting the message.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And, the first verse of the 37 practices makes that so clear. This sound human body, endowed with full leisure, excellent vessel, rare to be found. Since now we've obtained one, in no way deficient, let's work night and day without veering off course. To take across the ocean and free from samsara, not only ourselves, but all others as well. First, listen, think hard, then do much meditation. The children of the Buddhas all practice this way. No alternative. He mentions it in the very first verse. I mean, it's mainly a text on compassion and how to bring that into the path, but it doesn't happen without meditation. And proper meditation, they say, doesn't happen without some study and reflection first. So that's the way it is. And yeah, it's really bad news for my lazy mind. It's very bad news. But the good news is that if we do it properly, then we can, attain freedom. Okay, it's 1:20. It's been quite a long, but I hope fruitful session. Let's dedicate the positive energy for all of us to be well and happy and to actualize the combination of solitude and working for others, seeing that they are not, contradictory, but they are both necessary, and that actually solitude is necessary to some extent in order to bring about the proper experience of authentic compassion and so forth. May we never be separated from authentic teachings and teachers, and may we have great faith and delight in cherishing others, not just ourselves. And through making that a habitual pattern, may that become easier and easier to practice. May we overcome all the three kinds of laziness, and thus, as they say of the Bodhisattvas, blaze with energy, with positive energy. So for the Bodhisattva, even taking up very difficult tasks is said to be like an elephant plunging into a cool lake in the midday heat. That's how much pleasure and happiness the Bodhisattva naturally gets as a byproduct from benefiting others. Enjoys, there's great happiness in working for others. But without that sense that I am working for others. Of course, the Bodhisattva has the wisdom not to grasp at it. But naturally the byproduct is great happiness, which the Bodhisattva does not cling to, of course. So we can be like that. We aspire to be like that. And it can be done because millions, billions of beings have done it in the past and will do so in the future. Please pray for the long life of all the holy gurus we have on this planet right now. His Holiness the Dalai Lama, the Karmapa, all the great yogis, Kyabje Lama Zopa Rinpoche, all the great beings. Please dedicate for all those who are sick and ill, who have just died. Dedicate also for the attendant of Lama Zopa Rinpoche, who right now just broke his hip in Singapore and is experiencing tremendous pain. So Roger, who has served Lama Zopa Rinpoche for more than 30 years, we also dedicate for him to be free of his pain. Okay, thank you all very much online. Very kind of you, and especially our good friends from Turkey. I hope you have a good, happy Sunday in Turkey with everything auspicious. And all of our friends in India, Vishad, Abhishek, Kisar, Divya, Sujitji, Rahul, Payal, Anuj, Nilashi, Gaurav, Jan from Australia. Sorry, Jan, didn't see you. Jan from Australia. All of you, Chirag, have a good day. And yeah, hope to see some of you on Tuesday. And there will be something tomorrow morning, of course, 8:30 meditation, and hopefully some 6:30 session. Yeah, there'll be a 6:30 session tomorrow. And I'll join you again, I hope, Tuesday evening from Bodh Gaya. Okay, bye-bye. Thank you.